So, this is going to be Mark's first real podcast, and
Yeah.
we are keeping it very casual. So, there's we're not going to really have a structure, but there's a few things I want to talk about, but we're going to let this conversation be casual. So, Mark has never really done entire story of his life podcast on the internet before. So, first, I would like Mark for you to tell the audience who are probably the majority of the people who are listening to you now have never heard of you before. So they won't know any of the things you've done, the things you're working on now. So first, let's start off with where you are and what have you been doing the past, specifically over the past month. And then let's go all the way back to how we know each other.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot, but on the last month, I've just basically been blown away, by AI and like how you have put it to me in past. I had my blown away moment with what the fuck. I mean, can I say that? But what the hell is happening with AI, and just diving into it. And you know how I am. I like to play, and I like to find just play for the sake of playing without having to figure out the plan. And long story short, now I'm working on a video tool. I'm automating the A to Z of from like topic to like render stage. And I'm focusing on children's stories actually. And yeah, I've completed the whole pipeline. I spent 2 months relearning the whole process of coding. And yeah, now I'm just chilling in the farm with all my animals. And it's a good excuse to just sit down on the laptop and code because I have also Airbnbs, but there's not so many people. So I'm just chilling, coding,
But
vibe
I
coding, as they say,
I think I think this is where this conversation might go a different direction than you think, because I don't think that like the work part, AI part, everyone is semi interested in it. But a better
Ah,
question is where you physically, like I can see the farm around you. The audience doesn't even know you have a farm. So talk about
yeah.
that. So talk about where you are physically right now.
Yeah, so like where I'm physically right now is you can see I have animals. Like this is Arabica. It's actually the second largest species of tortoise in Thailand. And
Okay.
this little girl is just 1 year old. Basically, I moved to my farm like 1 year ago. Digital
Where's your
nomad,
farm?
like in Thailand. I'm in
Okay.
northern Thailand,
And how did you find this
Qingdao.
place, Mark?
I just did like a whole journey in Ecuador with ayahuasca, and then I just wanted to find this whole like community place. Like I was just called to this place, let's just say like that. And I decided to build my base here after like 5 years of traveling all around the world.
So you just came up there. I think it was a motorbike ride, if I remember
Yeah.
right. You had just gone up there with a motorbike ride. You found a place you liked. And after how many months of visiting did you actually pull the trigger and like buy land and stuff? Or like decide to make it your base?
Just 2 months. I was just so
Okay. Nice. All right. So the audience doesn't know this, but Mark and I have known each other since we were in, was it eighth grade? Okay.
I
So we
think
were,
so.
yeah.
Way
So
back.
Mark and I have known each other since we were about 13 years old.
Yeah.
And I want to actually go all the way back and then bring the story forward. I have a semi narrative photographic memory, so I remember a lot of stories from our past, so I can always fill in the gaps. But I'm going to start with one story, and then you can tell me the other things you remember because you have a lot more. So I remember when we were in eighth grade that you were the first person who got unlimited internet at home, or just way high amounts of internet. So you
Mm.
used to download video games on torrents and stuff like that, put them on CDs and sell them in class.
Yeah, I can't believe you remember that, but yeah, that sounds about right.
Yes.
Actually,
And
one more thing is I used to like buy things from Flipkart, original games, and then sell it to
okay.
people in the classes below me at
Okay.
like double the price because there was this store called Marga Electronics that would sell them
Hmm.
for 3 times the price. So I
Yeah.
was good guy selling them for 2 times the price.
Yeah. But because the reason I remember that story is because I often added it to the story of me selling my food. So I'm pretty sure
Mm,
you remember that. For the audience, I'll tell a story which was, and Mark, I'll tell you the story of how I find it relevant. Is the thing that I was good at was I could convince my parents, my mom specifically, to give me ham and bacon. Everybody else in
yeah,
class had like boring, like whatever peanut butter, just like jams and
yeah.
chapatis
I
and stuff
remember
like
that.
that. But I would convince my mom to to give me ham, bacon, and sausages. You should to sell that for and then be able to buy 3 times the amount of food in the school canteen. And the
Yes.
thing is, it's kind of like in the environment of a classroom we had a commodity we had a monopoly on a commodity. You had a monopoly on. So once the classroom has started, once the doors are locked, only Jeremy has the bacon and only Mark has video games. And also at the time, you were the only one with unlimited internet, so only you could be the one who could sell game that nobody else had. So you played an unfair advantage game because you had something which in the general world was an abundance. Like there's an
Yeah.
abundance of bacon. Why would anyone buy bacon? But the moment the doors are closed, the moment the classroom is closed, it's a valuable commodity. So I remember I always used to tell your story along with the story of me selling bacon. That's why it stayed in my mind. But so the reason I brought it up is because I was talking to one of our mutual friends a while back, and I said that given those stories, it's no surprise we ended up becoming entrepreneur later on in life. Like
Yeah,
this
of course.
happened when we were 13. That's like I know 15 years ago. So we were all, and I think you were much more involved in doing things online around CS:GO skins and stuff like that. So
Yeah, yeah.
we had this like tiny spark that always started when we were
Yeah,
like
like a
a
bubble.
lot younger. Yeah, that we later took to a much larger scale. So how did it go from Goa to Thailand? Tell the people the journey. I can fill in a few stories
Yeah.
along the way because we met along the way.
Yeah, I think after like I had my bubble moment, like what the hell is this? Because I can see it as a pattern and I've gone back and I've seen patterns on how my journey started. So I can put it like I had my what the hell moment and I got into the CSGO skins and I made a lot of money, especially when I got outside of Loyola's. And then I realized that I would like to learn how to do business and I wanted to study it in school, so in college. So I went to Bangalore and I did an accounting degree. And I realized that all I will learn there is how to be an employee. And that's even in the motto of the university for service and excellence. So I kind of signed up for it, because that's what they promise you. And I was like, shit, I didn't sign up for this.
I
And
mean, they
just
don't
not
say that they are
consciously.
great management consultants. They act as if they're
Yeah,
going to teach you business, but the actual thing is
yeah.
we create management consultants.
Yeah, but they even like kind of teach you business, but big like corporate level like
Mm.
bullshit business, which is also its own different conversation on how that's actually kind of valuable to go through that route if you want to get into like a accounting big four firm. And then I realized that I don't want to do that. And I had another what the hell moment where I started to make money online just out of the spite that I have for the system. I was like, you know what, fuck this shit. I'm gonna just figure out how to do things online. I again did the same thing I was doing in Loyola's, but on another level. And I just was this time for sure something is up. And that's when I started talking to you, I think, after a long time. I remember telling you in my last year that, yo, I'm so done with this. And that is, I think, the first time I actually opened up to you about that sentiment. Because right before that, I was like brainwashed and still believing that I'm going to follow that pathway. But then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be real with you. And that's when my whole journey started. I think that's when you kind of pushed me into that rabbit hole and I started listening to Tim Ferriss. I remember
Mm.
having whiteboards in my
Yeah.
room and people calling me crazy because I'm writing down shit on my whiteboard.
I don't know if you remember me telling you this, but so I came to visit you at your house. This was in 2017, I
Yeah,
remember, end of
yeah,
2017. I came to visit you at your place, and you had just like started learning about online marketing, all of these things, and your mom pulled me aside and she was like, Jeremy, do you think Mark is going to be able to do this thing? Do you think he will actually succeed at this thing? And I remember just telling her that, yeah, if he puts in the work, he will. But like, like at that time, you had like it was just an idea for you, like the idea of just like running your own business, being that your mom actually had to be like, will this thing work? She
Yeah.
was actually that worried about you that she, because even back then, like I still believe it's useful to do this because you'll act quicker, but you gave yourself a year. You were like, I'm going to try
Yeah.
this thing for 1 year before I go back into the system. And
Yeah.
it's like I've that has never been something I recommend because I'm much more of a head first jump off the bridge kind of
Yeah.
guy.
Jump in. Yeah.
But and I think now you're more of that, but it's still useful as something to help people who are getting started. But after that, I do remember one of the I started hiring you for a few of my businesses back then. That was one of the things that also got you started. But then I quit. Like I stopped working with you because I was traveling India. I was off the internet. I was going for Vipassana retreats, all of those things. So I had my almost like a retirement year. So what happened then?
I'm trying to piece it together. This is when I left to Bali, or this is before I left to Bali?
I think it was around the same time when you were stuck in when you were in Southeast Asia before COVID.
Okay, so that was like right after I started to make money and I had my agency. Okay, so this is after the freelancing era because there was a time when I was freelancing for you. I think you skipped that part.
No,
Okay.
okay, so I'm
S-
talking about when you were freelancing for me, but then I disappeared.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
That's when I was in Vietnam the first
Yeah.
time. Okay, yeah, I think that was the first reality check where I was still in a bubble where I was seeing the world through your lens and through your exposure, and you wanted someone to help you. And it was just a comfort zone that I got stuck in. And I think right after you left, I was forced to make 100% of my income through clients other than you. And I was already doing that to a certain extent, but not like so strongly where I could just tell you, hey, I don't need to work with you anymore. I have my own clients. And I was still very much like dependent on you as you are one of my big clients. So when you left, I was just forced to, that's when I had the biggest, like I would say, downfall in the journey where I went broke like 3, 4 times and I had like $50 in my account and I was like saving money by buying water for oatmeal because I was
Oh,
like
wow.
doing
Mm,
calisthenics and all that stuff. And then I was just spending the whole day like sending a bunch of emails to land
mm.
clients because I had the skills, but
Yeah,
the thing was the client issue, right?
of
And I
course.
just didn't have enough clients, and I didn't want to like build a brand on Upwork or Fiverr, so I was just like sending cold emails. And that's when I got my first big hit, and I just got started in the whole content writing journey, and I was traveling. That's when you came back, I think, and I was just like, I don't know if I had Monday by then, but I think I had a pretty big client like John Nestor or someone like that back then.
I do have one question because the thing is, many people start out this journey on a tech first and then they start traveling. But for me, I started with travel and then I got into tech, which was I actually only started working in B2B SaaS on like or SEO after like 6 months of travel. So the thing is, for me,
Uh-huh.
my travel started working much more micro hostel-y backpackery way before
Mm,
tech. So my
mm,
question to you is how was it entering both of these worlds at the same time? Because you entered the online working world at the same
mm,
time as you were partially entering this world of you were living in a foreign country. Because this was
mm.
Vietnam 2017 and you had moved to. So how was it dealing with both of those changes simultaneously in a way? Like, have you gone back to
Okay.
think about it?
I don't know how to answer that, but if I can imagine, like, I just got slow when started traveling. When I was starting to travel, I was traveling a lot and I was perhaps not paying as much attention to the work side. I was more like traveling to travel. And then I remember Just the other day, I was like remembering that I was writing ebooks from my phone in the night
Reading or
because in the
writing?
whole day writing, and
Okay.
because I had some clients that were hiring me to write their ebooks, and I don't even know how I was doing that because now it's like crazy because this was pre AI
Yeah.
internet, and I was like, shit, I was like actually writing because I was just sky skyscraper technique. I was just taking ebooks, downloading it, and just writing, my own stuff in there and like selling that to my client. And I was just traveling throughout the day with other travelers, and then in night when I had free time, I was working. So it was
Okay.
still like
Hmm.
not really a priority. But then when you left, I think it flipped, and I started to actually be like, okay, I want to make this a reality. So let me slow down, get a rent, rent a
Hmm.
place, not then, and like don't be like in a rush about traveling the world and making money online, that whole dream, and be like more work and be in a place as an expat. And then, I think that's when I switched to being an expat in that moment, you can say.
Yeah, I do remember in mid 2019, uh, we visited you in Hanoi and I
Yeah.
took you out for steak and I was so happy because you like it had been after like a long time of you struggling and you were so happy to just go out and eat steak and then we went out for buncha and so I do remember like just coming to Hanoi and feeding you. That was I mean,
I
but
don't
like the
know if it
thing
was like that, but yeah, yeah. I remember I
no,
was I was happy,
I have a question, which was I met one of our old high school friends for the first time in 13 years.
right?
Yes, Sonal,
Yeah.
for the first time in 13 or 15 years last week. And I was talking to him about how very quickly places that wasn't Goa became my safe spot, which is, I told him the story of Pokhara. So I moved to
Mm.
Pokhara, like I visited Pokhara within like a month of leaving Goa, and by my third month there, I'd worked with a lot of local businesses. I'd built websites for hostels, hotels, cafes,
In
restaurants,
Pokhara.
etc. Yeah, in Pokhara. So what happened
Yeah.
by the time of my third month there was I actually had free stay, a free hotel room, free food in many restaurants, and even free hash. Because these people just knew a lot of people and they gave that to me. So and I was like 18 at this time. So I'm an 18-year-old in Pokhara who has so
Monopolize the whole tech market there.
but
People are
but
offering you their children to marry.
but on
Imagine you
one
go back there
side,
now and someone comes there with their kid. Like Jeremy has finally returned, the prodigal son who brought
so
internet.
So the funny thing is I went back there after 10 years and it did feel like that. It was
Really?
incredible. Like people around
Yeah.
town recognizing me, getting invited for parties and everything. But I do remember two things about that, which is one, I believed I had to get out of there. I believed it was a kind of trap where this is too comfortable for an 18-year-old. I need to have more I need, like, this is not the life I want to continue to live. And also, I think I didn't always like this social dependence in a way. I was too much of a independent guy for everything to
Lone
be
wolf.
a socially dependent person. So that was the one thing. But the second thing was this meant by month 2 or 3, I already had Pokhara as my what am I going to do if things went bad place.
Okay.
So by July of 2016, uh, I'm like I just turned 19, and if things went bad anywhere in the world, I know if I go to Pokhara, I can slow down, rebuild my entire life from scratch. The people around me will support me. It already switched from the place I was born. It already switched from going home to Pokhara within 3 months. And we have many friends who moved into this lifestyle, who tried it, who have tended to and I have many readers who do this. Where times get hard, they always tend to go back to the hyper familiar place that they were born in. I mean,
Yeah, but
I've
yeah.
got hundreds of readers on my blog, so many of them have described that exact same thing. That I've seen this as a trend. I mean, quite often. It's not one person. So my question is,
But I actually
That
meant that as a good way. Like even I kind of have that as like those safe havens, right?
But yeah, exactly. So when did that switch happen? Do you know when it happened? Like in your mind, when do you feel like
When
which
a place
another
became a
place?
safe haven,
Yeah,
I think I would say even though I wasn't like as social as you, I was more already in the tech world where people didn't know what I was doing. I was just a weird guy on the laptop. I think Vietnam was really a safe haven because it was just so cheap there. And I remember at that time, I don't know about how it is now, but that time I would say Vietnam was the best place for someone starting out who didn't want to be like social or social or not social, right? But if you talk about safe havens, if they just wanted a place where it was like so cheap to live and have like a decent lifestyle there, you could just get like a $2 hostel with like 20 other people in the room and have your own bed and like your own AC. Like it was still cold. You had the screening curtains. So you kind of were fine, you know. You could even fucking work there, you know, from your bed.
yeah,
But you could go to a cafe and have one coffee for like $1 or half a dollar and just be there the whole day. You
yeah,
know, no one would say anything because people are always passing by and it's Vietnam. And I think that became a place where I could just like zone out from the like, you know, one of those places like, for example, Hoi An, where you go to Hoi An ancient town and there's like just a bunch of people in Kong Cafe and you pictures like you imagine you're just working on the laptop table, no one bothers you. It's
yeah.
almost like ASMR, you know, a real life ASMR. You just order the coffee and you're just working and then you finish your work, you just cycle to like Anbang Beach, which is the other side. You just go for the swim. That's life, you know, and I think I just got used to living in places where no one knew me and still feeling the most comfortable, you know, like I felt like I was like a hero, like a main character in a video game, and I
Mm.
could if I would just level up my stats, I would be able to level up my experience. But I already had a high experience, if that makes sense, you know. It was very psychologically like a trip, like I would say, you know, like when this happened to me,
Yeah,
it was crazy. And I'm
I
not saying it
definitely
because I'm
agree
high.
with it. I definitely agree with that, especially with Vietnam. It was after I left Pokhara, the only place that became like a new base for me was the Lat in Vietnam. That was the next time I had a big base where I'm like, this is my base. I shared this
Yeah.
story with Shonal too, which was that I was in Dalat doing TET and I'd stayed at the hostel for about a month or maybe two at one of these places. And the owner was going to his village to celebrate the New Year, the Vietnamese New Year. And he gave me the keys to the hostel. He's like,
Mm.
I'm closing the hostel. You can stay here for free. Here are the keys to this 5-floor hostel. I'm 19. I'm 19 and he just gave me the keys to the place for 2 weeks for myself. So that
I
was
don't know
one of
that
the.
happened, but that's good. The guy is good, man.
Back then, this is almost 10 years ago, it was incredibly underrated that people didn't really understand how nice of a place it actually was. Just as people probably don't understand how nice of a place your farm actually is. But
Yeah, I just realized I can switch places.
so now my question is, so that's your survival freelancing bubble.
Yeah,
How did it go
yeah.
from that to you being the boss? Because you went to your being
Okay.
the boss arc where everything was about how big of a business do you have and how many employees you have. So talk about
I
how you
think
became the boss.
I still am very much in that arc. Like everyone calls me around here. Like if you look at now, like because you asked me that in the past,
Yeah.
and how it is right now is it's weird that like a kid that's 20 years younger than most people can practically just. I don't want to go out and say it, but I just want to say be a very influential. You know, I want to be respectful that I'm in a foreign country, and you know the people here really take me like how you are in Pokahara. I would say that's what's happening for me now in this
Mm,
village,
yeah.
where people just practically like just give me land for such a like low price and then just want to give me the land forever and because I benefit the village.
They want to
And
let you
you
cook
know,
basically. They're like, let him
they just
cook.
want to let me cook because there's this. That's the best way to say it because there's a lot of people who are older. Some of them don't even have kids. And they see me, they see people like Tommy, and they just have like all the land and all resources they could imagine. And they're like, what will we do with this? So let me just rent it to this guy for like $100 and let's see what he does with it. And let me just help him with like all the legal paperwork required to buy land, to set up a company, to even have like help with legal side of things for setting up the companies, like
Basically,
having
it's like you're
staff,
driving and all
everything.
the lights have turned green, and you suddenly
Mm,
realize that wait, people are choosing to do that.
yeah,
People are
yeah.
choosing to turn all the lights green for me.
Yeah, and I think being in that boss arc, I think it was more damaging now than it was earlier. Because earlier, I was still very much in my bubble. I was a boss in a fictitious company that worked online, and it was very much on easy mode. I had never even left the home base, which was my Pokhara at the time. Which I remember you were telling me that I should be traveling. I have all the money, and I'm not as happy as I should be. I had my again final year Bangalore mark moment where I started telling you like, hey, look, I'm making all this money, but I'm not really happy. And I think that was the times when we were going back and forth on whether this is something that I should be doing or I should just burn down the whole nuclear bomb analogy and just go traveling. And I think when all those things happened which led to that moment, I started to break free from this bubble boss arc. And I started to reach a point where I was like, I have a really useful skill, but in the real world, none of that is actually real. And why don't I take what now in hindsight, I'm doing whatever I learned in the online world, I'm bringing it to the real world and applying it. And I'm just trying to like actually be someone with influence, which is the boss, and actually use that to the benefit of me. Like, I want to build big trees and a lot of things, right? And also the benefit of the village and the place I'm in. Yeah, but I don't know if that really answered your question about the boss arc thing. But yeah, I've been thinking about this these days.
Yeah,
So it was on my
it
mind.
does, and I think like the thing is for the audience, most people would benefit from the story if you first tell them the whole boss arc and then talk about the
Yeah.
post boss arc. So
Okay.
so because I think it's the post box arc of like, oh, I quit my high paying job to live in a farm. It makes a lot more sense to people when they also understand how you got to the
How?
boss. Because I think a better transition is how did you go from water in to oatmeal to business class tickets.
Okay. I mean, I think I just realized that it was a bit of timing. It was a bit of luck. It was a bit of like building up and being in the right moment at the right time. Because when COVID happened, that's when I think there was, I would say the all time peak in the software world pre AI was during that time, right before the whole COVID thing happened. And that's when what I was doing was really building a brand around like content and content for software. And I got picked up by this company, Monday.com. They saw my website ranked for that keyword, and they reached out to me. And from there, I would say everything was just so smooth and sailing. I had 0 months where I had no clients from that moment. I think that along with Facebook groups where I started sharing or Reddit and just navigating to kind of just navigate. I think that's very important where you just when you get a big break to supply that big break, you
Ride
kind
the
of
wave.
navigate how do you do it, right? And then you figure out other people, the big people in that field, because each and every one is like a game that you can climb up pretty easily. It's like I think what you told me earlier also about not identifying too much with something, the whole way you are a boss and you feel the whole reason we feel like we are in a safe haven place and we feel like a god mode is when we can do something, but we don't really become people who like identify with preaching about it. We are very clear that this gives us a lot of benefit, and then we have our real world things which we can bring that benefit in and translate that into projects or whatever. So I think I was very clear that I wanted to still travel and I still wanted to live the best life. And I was still transitioning from someone who's really caring about the tech world to someone that cares about the real world, because that's when I started to realize pretty soon and I think you also, that life really matters the most. So when I set myself the boundaries, like I need to make a lot of this much amount of money to live this lifestyle, and I had all these things I wanted to do. I just went through my whole Tim Ferriss sort of a phase where I was like, I want to get rich and I want to try everything. You know, I remember
Hmm.
I was telling you that, like, trying all the programs, ice baths, do the
Yeah.
whole expensive
Hmm.
sort of schedule. And that kind of, I was buying into that vision,
Hmm.
you know, of successful entrepreneur, travel millionaire. And that kind of manifested all these things in the real world. And me not identifying too much with that allowed me to actually take all the noise, like how we what we talk about today, take all the noise from AI and actually focus on what's gonna do the thing and move the needle for you. So I think that's what allowed me to scale, and also finding like my business partner Dory and having operations fuel my sales. It was just something that gave me a lot of freedom and a lot of growth, you know, with what I could do.
The thing that happened was you got hyper successful with your business, but it as the business got more successful, it didn't lead you to think about money less. Like that was the struggle we had, which was
Yeah.
you used to work a lot. Your business got hyper successful, probably the most successful at in the world in that moment, and it didn't lead you to
Mm.
actually have like spend less time working on your business. In a more specific sense, it didn't stop you from
Yeah.
3 o'clock in the morning Zoom calls. So even
Yeah.
when it like the no part of you didn't keep on getting higher. Like it wasn't that as the
Mm.
business grow you would say no more. It's the curiosity or the thirst kept getting bigger. And
Yeah.
okay, cool. You've caught up with the idea that making money, like that you can build businesses. So let's stop talking about businesses. And we couldn't talk about anything because in that moment for your life, the only thing that you were doing, it was much more hyper focused on just business and systematizing the life aspects, which is this is where people don't give Tim Ferriss enough credit in hindsight, which is in his book, The 4 Hour Work Week, he spends a lot of time actually talking about how work is not life. And the book is published like almost 20 years ago. And he spends quite a lot of time being like, cool, 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 do all of these things, dropship, get VAs, be a hyper optimizer. I use the word hyper optimizer for like this person who can like almost see the business or like whatever thing that they are doing like a matrix, like play those games at that level. But when it comes to your life, turn that part of your brain off. Don't become a early morning routine ice bath hyper person because that is probably not the life you want to live. And I think that was a big shift we had in that moment as you switched away from that old life where you knew you could make a lot of money and that became the only thing you could like in a way think about. But given the level at which you did it, at the age you did it shouldn't be that much of a surprise because like I think we talked about later, it takes most tech people and most tech pros their late 40s to actually be like, hey, health is important, family is important. And the fact that you already switched that in your mid 20s.
I think you were just someone that already planted that seed in my head, you know, because I remember even when with friends, with me, and for example, when we would talk, we would always be like how polarizing you are with ideas, but then how you also expect people to be anti-polarized to the same ideas which you were polarizing to. Like you just move at the speed of light, and sometimes it's hard to catch up with you because at one moment you're like, yeah, work online, but then the other moment is like, no, of course you shouldn't be working online, you know? So I think I think we were just lagging indicators to your like consciousness or whatever, you know, and I was still just very much, well, if I can joke aside, if I can say, like, unlike you, I was just my cadence was a lot longer. So I would say my patience to actually go into the field and actually sacrifice life to actually do that thing,
Mm.
I could actually make that trade. But you couldn't, you know, and you just wouldn't, and you just burn things down and just go on traveling. And, you know, because you always believe that in your 30s, maybe you might be more serious and, you know, whatever.
I mean,
Like, I think,
Now
yeah,
it's entering that phase now. It matches up with
yeah,
a lot of my life things to enter that phase now. So it's almost like I'm entering that phase today.
yeah, I can see that. Yeah, and I'm still very much entering in that phase as well. But it's more like I know it's more Lindy now, the version of me that is working versus the version of me which is not working. And it's like I'm still like having my traveling the world moment, but instead of traveling the world, it's like I have my diving into tech moment. And then I give myself like 2 or 3 months to systemize things, and then I would just close my laptop and go back into 100% living in the world. And that's one of the reasons why I think I've lined it up where I'm actually living in the farm. So it's like I don't have that have to be focused on the farm in June, for example, when the rains come and then it's time to start planting again, time to start working on the farm. Right now, I it's the dry season, so it's like my excuse where okay, it's not good to plant now or do things now, it's too hot. So I might as well just take a holiday, work from my real life, work and build this thing, and go back into the life which I love right now,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
So I have a question which is talk more of the volatile phase, which is
Okay.
so I talked about how we met in Hanoi. Another time we met was in Serbia. So you had this was during COVID. You had just like gone working on your business. You had scaled your business. I think 30 or 50 employees. You were doing
Yeah, it was a peak.
hundreds of yeah, hundreds of thousands of employees a month or whatever. And you finally ended up leaving Vietnam and came to Europe. And you met me in a national park in Serbia. And the
Yeah,
only thing I remember is we would invite you for hikes and you would be sleeping with sheep. That's my only memory of that time is it was kind of like you had just come out of like working super
yeah,
hard and you would just
yeah,
go to the nearby farms and sleep with sheep. So, and
yeah.
how did it go from that to
And
ayahuasca?
I miss sleeping with sheep. I'm
I mean,
gonna sleep with
cats are
my
nice,
dog.
but
I'll sleep with my
sheep
dog
are very
now.
different.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so you were asking me how was what was the last question?
How did it go from that moment, the starting point of when we met in
To ayahuasca, right?
so like the
Yeah,
volatile wouldn't call it volatile but like it was a more it was a more unstructured period in your life, like when you're working on the business
yeah,
you can put it in the business category, when you're in the farm you can like kind of like almost structure it to be like I'm doing this.
yeah.
Those few years was a
Skills,
lot
yeah,
more unstructured.
yeah,
Like 1 year you were way
yeah,
into
yeah.
dancing and almost like being a dance guy at all of these events. The next year you were doing ayahuasca so tell me, talk more about that time because I actually don't know about a lot of this. Like I don't know what
Mm,
led you to do ayahuasca because we never
mm,
talked that much during this time because I think I was traveling a lot.
Yeah, wow, that was a volatile phase, definitely. It's a good way to
Unst-
say it.
Unstructured is better.
Unstructured, yeah, yeah. Because I think it was not really like volatile in the sense that I was trying to figure out the money part. It was more like trying to figure out like the meaning part, I would say, or the living part, which is like, okay, now I know how to make the money part, but the living part is not as good as the money part anymore. How do I make the living part feel as good, And like go on that whole journey on why am I not even feeling good in the living part when my money part is so good, And I think that that awakening and then coming to Serbia was me actually realizing that, hey, I don't need to think about anything right now. I can just sleep with sheep, you know? And I can just spend like 2 months in like oblivion, like not making any decisions and like just like closing my laptop and not even like there was the time I would say when Tim Ferriss would say when he was so stressed about making his business work, but when he took a holiday or vacation, his business started doing a lot better than it
Mm.
ever did when he left it alone. And I think that was what happened to my agency. It started to fall into place. Dory started to having her own freedom to do things and have like a space to do things and not actually come to me because there was no me. I was just sleeping with sheep, whatever. And like I think realizing that I could do that for like 2 months and then realizing that I could do that for maybe more than 2 months. That's when I went to Dominican Republic and I started to get into diving. I actually did my advanced diving
Mm.
course in Dominican Republic. So it was a beautiful place with underwater caves and stuff to do it. And yeah, I think that's when I started to realize that life can take a priority now, you know. And I think a lot of people that get into tech, I don't know, like I just saw the other day, like this very popular entrepreneur, really good guy. He has I don't know if you know him. He's a really good, like micro, not even micro, I think it's proper SaaS now, and he has many a portfolio of sites, makes $1 million a month, and he just hasn't really taken a break, you know. He he just shared, like, he's in Vietnam right now actually. What
Mm.
a, like, you know, we are talking about Vietnam, and he is in Vietnam taking a vacation after a long time, you know, and a 2 week long vacation. And he actually talks about like how, what are the automations he needs to set right before he goes on this vacation. Because, you know, I was in the same trap that I was like, shit, if I turn my laptop off, what are the things that would need me but wouldn't have me, you know? And would it be okay or would it not be okay? Because I was just living in this life where I was like building it, and I was so switched on that I completely switched off about the life part. And I think when I started to travel Europe and South America again, I started to really prioritize life and actually spend the money that I was making, because a lot of the time, I think, being Indian and having come from a background that's not super rich, we have this habit of like make money and make money and make money,
Always
and you know,
invest.
like have, yeah, always invest, always like keep growing your portfolio. And I think that's something that Indians have different from Europeans, is they are oftentimes very rich, but their lifestyle isn't as rich as
Yeah.
someone who's broke from Europe,
Mm.
you know? And like even now, for example, like I have some friends from who are like younger in Europe, people that I met, even like learning from how my girlfriend is right now. And
Happy
she
birthday.
she just likes to live her dream life in the farm, take care of all the animals, take care of the farm, like, and she is someone that is least bothered about money part, you know, because like she focuses very much on the real world part. And I think, I don't know, I think it's also a lot to do with education, but that's another conversation where during funny stories during the like kids time. I don't know how was your education, but when she was a kid, they actually did like firefighter games where they worked with firefighters in camps to
Mm.
learn fire safety. They went to camps and they learned a lot of like things. They had canoeing trips, and they had a very rich education from the government, you know, and was very much life focused, I would say. And I think being Indian, we never had that, you know, when we were growing up. So
I
I
think
I was
this
still
is
like, yeah.
I was going to say that this is where India and the US are very similar, where they are both very monetary and education focused locations. Like you, while both Europe and Latin America tend to be integrating work into life. Another way of describing it is both in the US and India, you tend to have people who lead the conversation with the work they do, while in Latin America and Europe, you're much more likely to know people for 2 months and never know what they do. Like I have friends where we've talked for like we known each other for 2 months, and like after like 2 months, do I learn what they do for their work? And
Mm,
that is kind of like it's structurally very different just based on how much of a rat race society is in those places. And like we grew up in like scarcity. We grew up with like just like education being massive, like rote learning. You're just memorizing, and it's hyper competitive. So it's one of those things where like it's not adaptive for the world that we live in today. So one of the crazy things around tech, which is which is actually a bit funny, is yeah. So you talked about how people don't really optimize life. If you listen to any older person, like very old, they'll tell you it's all about life, don't care about work that much. But every tech person has this podcast tour when they are 40, where they go around different podcasts and be like, hey, you should not work that much and health is important. And I'm always at shock at the how people have that conversation, because I assume we should have that conversation when we are 20, not when we are
Mm,
40. And but like you said, people are stuck in this world where everyone around them is doing that exact same thing. So how can they choose any other option? How can and especially like I don't know if you would feel this way. It's much harder to not be a business person in Southeast Asia. Business people are the most respected in like the like hustle culture works in Southeast Asia. The it
mm,
flows with it. Hustle culture doesn't work the same on a beach in Rio. They'll tell you just close the laptop. While in Vietnam, they'll be like, no, tell me more about your business. And
mm,
those different mentalities kind of often come in conflict. And one place it comes in conflict with is people's negativity to ayahuasca. I don't you
mm,
don't spend that much time in SF Tech, but I remember a few years ago SF Tech had this huge debate where people are very negative towards ayahuasca because it's this joke of how people quit their tech jobs, becomes a traveling stripper whose eyes are dazed. And in many now venture raises in Silicon Valley, they now include the clause you are not allowed to do strong psychedelics. So it's actually a
mm.
clause for raising funding in SF startups that you're not allowed to do it because you will change your life so much and destroy your business. Now, as somebody who's actually done that, Mark, you destroyed your business after ayahuasca. Tell me what led to it and tell me how things are after.
I think I was just forced into like getting real about the life part because getting real and like the whole equation of why is my life path not as good as the work path, and then transitioning to putting the goodness in the life path. I think that's a very real decision if you want to do it right. If you want to real do it for real, and that oftentimes involves things like burning down your business, burning down relationships that don't serve you, and just burning down your whole image and just being able to, like, for example, go to Serbia and spend 6 months just hiking everywhere, for example, and just like just taking off all the layers of your identity and just being, wherever you are, like isolated from things, not necessarily like a monk, but just living life the way you want to live it at that point, and I think after I did that I never really got back to my business, and I think I got comfortable with the idea that I just didn't need more money or more success. And that's also when I got out of a relationship also at the time. So I was like detached from everything, and had to basically go on a journey. And that was happened right after ayahuasca. So ayahuasca was like the moment where I was like, I really need to go further. I don't know what's gonna take me there. And I was already like I was in the Caribbean. So I was already in a place where people are telling me to close down the laptop, you could say. That was the vibe. And I just wasn't even working there. I was just like diving, doing everything, having fun. And that version of Mark was already very like fine with ayahuasca, and it came
Mm.
to me, I think, through many different sources. And I went into it, and I had an amazing, I don't know if you want to know more of the experience, but I had an amazing, like, changing experience, which led me on a journey where I wanted to actually do the things which I wanted to do, especially with community building. The whole reason I have the farm, I would say, is attributed also towards ayahuasca, because I
Mm.
also met the co-founder of the farm at the ayahuasca. So it was directly related also, it was
Yeah.
crazy.
Talk a little bit more about the experience. When we talked about it after you did it, you talked about the changes you wanted in your life, but you never talked that much about the experience. We've never had this conversation.
Okay. Well, the whole setting was like a 2 week retreat in Cuenca. I don't know if you know that place. It's like middle in Ecuador, and it was completely different world, by the way. Amazing place, Ecuador, and I know there's a lot of things about it in the media or something in the last few years, but amazing. They actually have like whales, penguins. They have the Amazonian areas.
Mm.
It's like Argentina, everything in one, and it's like so surreal of a place to go to. And I was already there for like 4 months, and on the fifth month, I did ayahuasca. So a lot of people do it like one day after they get a leave approved in America, for example, and then the next day they fly into, the place, and then the next day they do the thing. And then after like 2 weeks, oftentimes they have their phone on, and they're still like you can have your phone on and you can be on your phone during the off ceremony days, whatever. But that's the vibe usually over there,
Yeah.
So when I was already getting into it, I was already like 4 or 5 months into unlearning, and unlearning that version of me who was there in business. Living in South America, as there was like the third country from Serbia. So it was Serbia, it was Dominican Republic after Serbia, and then I went to Mexico, then I went to Ecuador. Yeah, it was actually, I think I came back to Africa, Kenya, spent
Yeah.
some time traveling there, and then I came to Ecuador from Africa because that was when I wanted to really like try something new, take
So
me to
when you
another
say it's
realm
the
sort of
third
thing.
country, would the emotion you're describing be something like it's the third country you like, when you sit in a nice couch and you like almost melt into the couch? Is it like
Yeah.
the third country where you felt that emotion or just like melting into the place?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and by then I was already like 6 months or whatever into not working, and one of the biggest I think catalyst was I actually exited my agency one
Oh
month
yeah.
after I quit working in Dominican Republic. So when I exited, I basically was like free, right? And
Yeah.
I made had that I made it moment, and I just didn't have any excuse to go back. And yeah, I think ayahuasca was when I wanted to really like stop doing things in the you can say the three-dimensional world, like trying dancing, trying going to the extremes of things like
Yeah.
having this
Gymming.
diving certification, gymming, trying to like looks maxing, they call it apparently
Yeah.
nowadays, like
The
person maxing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I tried check, 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 and still started to feel like, nah, it's not as good as it should be. And that's when I was like forced to kind of go into this ayahuasca sort of a realm. And yeah, I think that experience, it just kind of like, it just made me forget everything. It was like 2 weeks long. So it was like on the second day or the third day you had your first ceremony, and then on the fifth day you had your second ceremony, and then on the other day you had San Pedro and ayahuasca mix. So it was like not just one ceremony; it was like a 2 week long journey, and you can do Cambo in there, you can do San Pedro, and it's all structured. And it's like a 50,000 hectare like estate in the mountains of Ecuador. And I remember looking at like a flag from Canada, like 10 days into the thing. And I was like, what is that flag? Like I just completely forgot. And I was actually telling another friend, I was like, you know what flag that is? Like, like I wasn't even like hi. I was
yeah.
that day we did a San Pedro, and we kind of in San Pedro you go into Te, Temascal, like this whole sauna created like by the South Americans, and like the whole native Indian sort of vibe. And you do a 8 hour journey, and then you come out of there reborn. That's the short version of it. And then I was just like getting hammered with my identity, where it was this bush. It was out of me, and I basically was free, and I could feel like all these emotions, which made me more human. It just made me connect with other people's suffering, other people's like lifestyles, life decisions, and traumas. And it just kind of made me really, like, for a brief amount of time, grounded me to another being like, hey, I don't want to do anything right now. I just want to be, like there's something that's really changed in me and I don't know what it is. So it made me pause for a little bit, I would say. Few months only.
Yeah.
Because 2, 3 months later, I did that whole journey with farm.
We can always delete this if you don't want this. But how did you go from having this incredibly peaceful spiritual experience that's so identity opening to then have a fuckboy phase?
Yeah. Okay, let's hope my girlfriend doesn't watch this podcast. Okay, so I would say like I just never really got to be in that phase, I could say, when I was starting to get successful, or I was starting to like be an expat. I just jumped into getting serious with a girl, and like doing serious things and getting the money and everything. and I never really got to travel and live. So I think for me, it was more like I just started to live, and I just, if I would say it holistically, that, I just what I think after ayahuasca was more or less that phase, but it was for me
Okay.
like during the time when I was in a relationship because I could take a break and then I could still like, explore. So I think after Ecuador, it was more like now I can just live and I can just start new and I can just meet a lot of people and I could just do different things. And yeah, like I just started to really explore life. I would say like a European, like how they would in the 20s, where they would just be
Basically, you
like
had your gap
free.
year in a sense
Yeah,
when you were in your mid
yeah.
20s. Yeah. Okay.
I allowed myself to have a gap year
Yeah.
after I did all the things which they would say an Asian person has to do. You go to college, you do the get some money, you have, like I gave myself the gap year basically.
But so my question is, at some point during that, once you went, when you like almost like got good at the phase, you could say, when did you get quote unquote tired or bored of like playing the game in a way? The whole idea of like the game, the
After
chase.
Ecuador, yeah, I think I just wanted to. I still had a lot of visions quite vividly from my Ecuador trip where I saw like these visions of community, visions of people experiencing joy, uh, and group consciousness and just being happy with the music, and it just inspired me to kind of do something on my own like that someday. And every place I went to, I realized was like a prefabricated version that you would buy into, and you would not really own any of the assets or like have your own individuality. I would say you would kind of get into like a vibe of that place. Of course, there's many places which you can, of course, be yourself, but I just didn't find a place where I could bring and share things of me into the world. And I was really longing for a place that I could really lay down my roots and unpack my bag, because before I was all about packing a backpack and going around the world.
Mm.
And I think I really got tired of that idea because it's really good as a meme or it's good as a like starter mindset. But after some time, you're like, okay, I'm really tired of unpacking my backpack. I just want things in a cupboard. I just want my own room. I just want to go to the same bed. And you just start to get older, I would say.
My wife has a funny story. We were in like this nice antique shop where she found a painting. She like looked at it, it's sad, and she's like, I don't even have a wall. Which is
What?
we've been because we've been living out of a backpack for like 7, 8 years at that point. So she
Mm.
so she just suddenly it dawned on her that she's like, I don't even have a wall to put a painting on. And right
Now
now
I
she
see all the paintings on the wall,
of
the
course.
pictures, especially of your.
But it was just one of those things of like that the feeling of it, especially after years, can really like drag on you because you're always saying goodbyes. I remember I talked a lot about how I was tired of goodbyes because I'd entered this world, which was the backpacking world, the travel the world,
Mm.
the whole world. And you make a lot of great friends. You make a lot of people who you're in touch with. You have a great experience. And then you say goodbye. You say you think you're going to see them again, but you never actually are sure it might happen. And just grew tired of that. Yeah, business, that's easy. I've solved that. But this loneliness epidemic, how the hell do I deal with that? Like, I'm tired of dating, I'm tired of goodbyes. It wasn't
Mm.
just relationships, it was also friendships. I'm tired of making good friends at hostels or co working spaces and then not knowing them 5 years from now. And how do I change that? When I talked to all of these other people in the mastermind, their solution was just go party, bro, just use Tinder, bro. And I'm like, you guys don't understand it. That's not going to be a solution that works for the next 5 years. So, how
Mm.
did you meet your now girlfriend?
Okay, I think it was a similar pattern where you were done with a lot of the game and the things that were prefabricated. And I was just like, I'm ready to lay down and kind of be grounded. And I would like to meet no one because I was just overstimulated, overwhelmed by all the things that you can find in a city with all the apps, with all the, prefabricated unrealness of a world we've created. And I just made the decision of coming to a like a village in northern Thailand with no other digital nomads. And, I just wanted to live in the mountains. I had bought land and I just wanted to be close to the land I bought. So I rented a farm, another farm, which I live in now. And I just stayed in the house and it just was being. I think that was basically what I was doing after ayahuasca, traveling, but to a new world every time, to another place. And this time I decided to get a 5-year lease and just be rooted, without a plan, and being the only digital nomad in that whole village, you can say, which was now I think pretty ballsy, but at that time I didn't even think about it.
Mm.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of create a profile, you can say, in this place, which was me. And then I just went on a journey to add what is me to that place. And actually, just 3 months or 4 months into this whole journey, I think 2 months in, I did go to Bali because I was still like, hey, I'm not used to having such a slow life. So I need to go to another place every 2 months. So I went to Bali with him, my friend Himan, traveled around, went to Lombok, beautiful place, had the whole travel thing. But I started to realize, like, hey, this is what I came out from, and I moved to the countryside. And now this feels like a step back. This doesn't feel like it wasn't the same. It was like me coming back home after I was traveling for the first time in Bali, and I went back home and everything was different. This was like in 2008, 17 or 16. Everything was different. And then going back to traveling because I was like, okay, that was not what I wanted. I want to go back into travel. So for me, it was like I moved here to a place no one else was. I would spend time here and not really knowing what I'm doing there for like 2 months, and then going to travel to Bali, looking for like thinking that that's how it's going to be every 2 3 months. I'm going to go to a new place, not really liking it, and coming back and like like doubling down on like this whole vision. And I think 3 months after that, I just met the woman I met right now, and she's she just came there and she just showed up. We always make fun of it, that I send my universe, that said to the universe, this is what I want. And I actually was thinking about what I kind of want in a person that I would be in a relationship with, what I should be to attract that person. And I just started to do those things, and then she just showed up 2 months later. It's crazy. It's like the universe actually listens to you when you tell them what you want. And when you do the things which you manifest, which is a lot of things, a lot of people focus only on the manifest part and less on the doing part. But if you combine the things, then the universe just hands you the thing without
Yep.
an app. A
Of
lot of the
course.
readers
Yeah.
will be like, what? You use Tinder? I'll be like, no, I use Dow Home, my house, pretty much.
I also how much time plays a role here, which is day I met my wife was on a hike, and so our first ever conversation was probably 6 hours. So, because you start hiking, you're talking a little on the hike, you're talking a little. So, I'm curious, the first conversation, because like when you're living in this dating in cities, whatever world, conversations exist at a different time and in different environment than they do, let's say, a conversation on your farm. The casual
Mm,
nature, the unburdened shoulder nature of the conversation.
mm.
So I'm curious at not necessarily the first conversation, but how much did meeting people in environments of time play a role here? Like,
In
was it?
environments of like this, like how is the interaction here versus another place, right?
No,
Like that's,
in not just the location, but the location with time. Where when you
yeah,
start a conversation, when you meet someone for coffee, where you don't have a deadline, where
yeah,
you're meeting somebody and both the people have the space of like,
time.
yeah, we
Yeah,
don't have a deadline. We're just talking, and this might be a
yeah.
1 hour conversation or 8 hour conversation, and having that
Hmm.
freedom to think and talk that way.
Yeah, I think when you finally live, you have a lot of time, and this was basically my house. This is where you would find me all the time. So in my case, I had all the time in the world. I was not going anywhere, maybe to my room upstairs. That's it. But, when I met people here, or for example, when I met Anata here, it was like people that would come here, they would stay for 2 weeks minimum, and they were actually volunteering at my friend's place, where they would come here, and I this is when I actually I never volunteered in my life, but I actually have the largest volunteering brand here in Qingdao, which is crazy. I have hundreds of volunteers that have come here, and it's crazy. And I started to meet a lot of volunteers, and I started to see how they can like commit 2 weeks into a place, and they don't do anything else, but they just come and help you with the project. They want to learn things. They want to meet other people. And I met people like that who were, I would say they were still travelers, but they had time, They didn't really, especially when they were just volunteering at my friend's place, and then they were like coming to my place because of the flood. There was a big flood in Thailand. So a lot of the people's houses were flooded. And I was just helping out and getting some volunteers in my place because I had a lot of room. And, like people would come in. I was still like working online, working in the farm, like not really like a farmer at that point, still like being a tech guy who has a farm, I would say was just like defaulting in that and doing some things online. But I was like, I would say I was starting to meet people that had time. And that started to finally like switch the thing in me where a lot of the people I met, maybe when I was in Bali or people like when I was traveling, oftentimes had a set period and then they would have set plans, where they would travel. And of course, you would have magic when you travel. But I think just the nature was a bit different when I started to meet people here and I started to actually get to know them over like a period versus just one interaction, So even like with Anita, for example, like we actually didn't talk as much in the first few days. And I was just very grumpy about letting people into my house. So I was just like the grumpy guy who's like living on the land, but I was not super happy about having so many people come into my house, although they were great people. But then I started to really know her by working with her on the land on different things over the weeks. And that's when I started to actually talk. So it was very natural, I would say, momentum, very,
Hmm.
very real. Yeah.
So we've gone all over the world and we've come back to your farm. So
Yeah.
now, Mark, plug your farm. Tell everyone where your farm is, everything that you're up to, and how people can come visit. Because we
Yeah.
started the journey at your farm, gone all over the world to every continent, and now we're back. So tell the whole world about
Yeah.
your farm.
I think it's more like my house, which is incorporating elements of a farm, like I am surrounded by a lot of like trees now and like I have a tortoise house there. I have like a cafe there. It's very ADHD. I have some berries growing around here. Like I think as a tech person, we like to try everything. We like to fail. We have no problem with like moving fast. And I incorporate the same things in my farm and my house where I just do everything and anything that I kind of comes to my mind. And I have tortoises. Like what the hell? Like why do I have tortoises? Why am I gonna get a parrot in 1 month? I don't know, but I just would like a parrot here on my shoulder, Maybe one more on this shoulder also, so I can have blue and red. But I guess I'm just like a kid living a life that I want to live. And I think I just wanna, yeah, just live. And I don't know if I'm gonna be showing people per se how to live this life. A lot of the times when you finally start to live this life, you just try to live it, I think. And every time I have all the podcasting equipment, camera, drone, I don't do as much, about sharing about my farm, which I understand it's part of the double-edged sword. Once you start living the slow like life here, it's hard to incorporate like being an influencer,
Hmm.
also living this farm life. Yeah, but I hope if you guys want to come, it's like Dao Homestay. It's in northern Thailand. I have Airbnbs all around, animals. Yeah, what do you want to know about the farm, or like is there some questions about
What
it?
are the things people do around volunteering? How's like the daily life there
Uh,
in the region? What
yeah,
have like past volunteers said that they love about the place and the vibe, the people? Talk
yeah.
about
I
the
mean,
gym.
yeah, I think I was just like, what we do very well is we just play versus we build a business or something like that. A lot of the things are ADHD driven by ideas, and that's what people like is whenever they bring their ideas, even if they are volunteer, we put them to reality. We build that trellis, we build mud houses, we build yeah, we build all these things, and now I have like a oasis ecosystem with a gym and a cafe. I have like a second floor area which I just built to see the mountain. It's just so random, but I'm like, why not? Why shouldn't we? I'm having my moment where I'm like, owning land is like owning a website, you know and website is like how we I realize that owning a domain name gives you the authority to have some like place in that domain name, and I'm like, okay, having some land, you can have some you can have some powers too, you can have trees, you can have so many things. And I think I'm just like kind of moving past from the vision of owning a house and like understanding that actually land is quite cheap versus like being in Goa, for example. Land is really expensive there. We don't think about owning a big piece of land with grass, and we think about, or even when I was like a entrepreneur, I was like more of a villa, with like a small garden. Like in Vietnam, I remember looking and staying in a villa with a small pool. I was like, okay, I could buy like something like this and own a villa or whatever. But then when I came here, farmland was so cheap, and I started to see how it's just an opportunity to come here and build something in such a reasonable land and have like 1,600 square meters. So I have like a lot of room to work with.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm really glad with I can show you another little guide, Turbo. Really glad that I built a little ecosystem for animals and flora, fauna, and humans. I can say that.
That's nice.
Yeah,
I don't know if you remember, but when you were 18, your first business idea you ever asked me about was in farming. You got the
yeah,
idea to start a nootropics farm.
yeah.
So the first business idea 10 years ago you ever talked about was farming
Hydroponics.
and
Yeah, I remember.
hydroponics, not nootropics, sorry. And now, 10 years later, we're still talking about farming. That's very
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. That's a coincidence, like, but it's, yeah,
I
pretty
mean,
much.
this is once you've solved tech or like once you've solved money, when you want to discover what you like, just remember what you enjoyed when you were 16. Just go back to think of what you found cool and enjoyable
Yeah.
when you were 16. You'll probably still enjoy that. Those are the things you want to do.
Yeah, I think Goa also has a lot of like, I don't know about you, but we had a lot of like hikes in the forest, and Goa is literally a lot of like green paths. And I think we towards the like as we got older, we probably forgot about how nice Goa was,
I grew up in
to
quite
travel.
a. It's underappreciated to actually grow up in other people's travel destination and paradise, which is the way
Yeah,
you look at Thailand, or most people look at Thailand, is how many people look at Goa. But for us,
yeah,
that was just our backyard because
yeah,
that was where we were born.
yeah,
But it is nice to go back and appreciate it the way we appreciated it growing up,
yeah.
going around with our
Because
bikes.
yeah, Qingdao is a lot like Goa, I would say, in the sense without a beach. But I think that's the feeling which got me here. Only thing is Goa has gotten so expensive to buy land in versus Qingdao. So,
Also, there's always this thing of like no man's a prophet in his own land. When you're an outsider, you often get a lot more leeway than when you're an insider
mm,
because you enter a place without the baggage that you have, positive and negative baggage. Like you build the connections from scratch versus inheriting the connections.
that's
And that
very,
sometimes
yeah.
means a lot more.
You're less biased also to get your connections and sources from. You're forced to be an outsider. I think, yeah, that's really good analogy. Yeah, that's really good.
So, thanks for joining for this podcast.
Yeah.
And I'm going to send everybody to the Instagram of your farm and your Instagram profile. So the farm is Dow Homestay,
Yes.
at Dow Homestay, and the
I'm
username
plugging my
for,
farm shamelessly.
yeah, of course, that's the whole. Like we made it to the end of the call, so everybody who's still here, they definitely have to go visit Mark on his farm. Mark's username is the real Mark, DHE real Mark. So follow Mark on Instagram and Dow Homestay. Mark,
Yes.
thanks for joining this
Thanks.
podcast.
Ciao, man.
And